We could do a summer party. It's the weather.
Can't we do this show outside or on the roof?
Weekdays at 9 on 6ABC.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco. It's so great to be here with another inspirational story from a woman who's a leader in her field. Joining me in just a moment will be Kathy Bloomgarden. Kathy is the CEO of Reuter Finn, which is a global PR and creative agency that was actually founded by her dad in 1948. So it has quite a legacy. Later in the show, you'll hear from our Lifestyle Watch contributor, Sherry Morrison. And Sherry's going to be profiling Charlotte Alston, who is a master storyteller from across the nation, but local here. And we're very excited to hear her story as well. So now I'm very honored and excited to welcome to the show Kathy Bloomgarden. Kathy, thanks for being here.
Sue, it's great to be here with you and talking to your audience. And I know that you really inspire everyone with the podcast that you do. So I'm honored to be one of your conversant partners today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And tell me, I know you're traveling. Where are you today?
So today I'm in California, and everyone seems to be getting back to traveling again, which I think is, interesting, but it's a little bit of a change, right? So from what we've been doing for the 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's a little more stressful than it used to be. But hopefully the further we get away from, the pandemic, the more we'll be able to adjust to all the new changes.
Definitely. Yeah. So back in the swing of things, and it's thankfully, because it's nice to be talking to people face to face again after such a long time.
It is. So listen, a big part of your story is obviously your dad starting this company. And I first want to, again, send my condolences. I know that your dad passed away just a year ago. He was 100. I think that speaks a lot to his, I would say his, choosing to continue to work and move forward and live life. And I guess my first question is, how has it been this past year without him, without having his presence around you?
Well, so you're right that he never even thought about retiring. He was always, learning and doing things and talking to young people in our agency. So he was very much a presence, and people loved to, just chat with him. Being one of the founders of the field of communication, Reuter Finn was one of the first PR agencies in the world. So people really enjoyed the fact that he would wander down the hall and stop by a young person's desk and talk with them. But, what he left us was actually a very strong culture. And, the agency is a family business. And, we have that feeling towards each other that we really have a culture of caring, of really helping people to realize their potential, of staying in touch. And it really even had deeper meaning during the pandemic time when we couldn't be together, that people just asking each other, how are they doing, and being sensitive to the family needs and other things that came up for everyone during the course of these past months. So my dad not being here still left this very strong footprint and very strong legacy in terms of culture, in terms of creative thinking. He was a very, very creative person. He never was doing only one thing. He had an amazing hobby, which he drew everyone in the agency into, which is creating paperclip sculptures. And what he would do is he would actually take a bag, a little box of paper clips. And while he's talking to people in a meeting, he would be opening them up and twisting them into figures. And it was just really an expression of, this great creative, engine that really constituted him. And we have in our agency, we have paperclip sculptures, in the different rooms, and, people just love to interact with him. And so there's a very strong footprint that he left that really influences us.
Did I read as well, he used to photograph sculptures?
So he actually created, he was an author of 100 books. And when I was first talking to a few people, they were like, 100? Are you sure it's 100? And I sent them the list. Yeah, he didn't ever really go on vacation. He spent a lot of time in Italy, actually, where he was photographing on the streets or in the museums or in churches where he would find these beautiful sculptures. Photographing sculpture was really what he enjoyed most.
Mhm.
And he even wrote a book called How to Look at Everything, really reminding us that it's not just, a fast look at something. You look deeper, you see new things, you really can uncover layers and layers of meaning.
Mm.
And I remember a really funny story um, when I was with him as a teenager in Italy, and he just suddenly dived under a table in the museum. And I was like, oh my God, where'd he go? And he's like, look at the legs of this sculptured table. It's unbelievable. And he was photographing the legs of the table, which turned out to be a Donatello sculptured, very
Oh,
famous
wow.
Italian, artist, which he had
Yeah.
noticed in just walking by. And many, many people, of course, would never stop to look at it. So he was always a constant inspiration for something unexpected or something new.
Yeah. And it seems as though he was ahead of his time as well. What traits do you believe you have from him? I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about, what one of the things I find so fascinating is your educational background and what you're doing today. But I'm sure there are some traits that you inherited from him that serve you well in your role.
Absolutely. Well, he had a lot of, famous sayings that he told me that stick in my mind forever. One of the things he always said to me was, just because you haven't done something doesn't mean you can't. And, all of us say, well, I'm not expert in that. That's not my area, that I haven't had a lot of background. And in our agency, we really try to adopt this motto. In fact, we have it on the wall for people to be really bold thinkers and to really try, really to stretch themselves and to try. And I always felt that way as a very important, motto for me personally. And, you mentioned my background. Well, when I did join the agency, one of the first things I asked to do was to open our China offices. And everybody thought, what a crazy idea.
Yeah, right.
There were no real PR agencies in China. It was really not a market that was very dynamic at that time. And I was just so stubborn. And I given my background and having studied Mandarin and gotten a doctorate in political science, I wanted to merge these different parts of my life. And I wanted to try something that I felt no one else had actually done. And so this motto of always thinking that, you can do it, it really was very much embedded in for me and also in our culture. And the second thing he always said to me is time is elastic. You know how we always say, oh, I'm too busy, or I can't get to that, or I can't take on another project. But he always said, you'll make time for the things that are important because there is no set boundaries of time. Time is elastic. You can stretch it the way you want to.
Yes.
And it was, it always in my mind. It always is in my mind that that's absolutely a truth that I hold to.
I think one of the things that is impressive, and I'm sure is a trait that you carry from him, is developing a trust in others in him. So just so people know, he had worked with some very notable clients, and John D. Rockefeller the third, John F.
Mm.
Kennedy, just to name two big names. So what do you believe was it that allowed him to develop that trust in people, or what did they see in him that they trusted his expertise?
Well, first of all, he's a very good listener. And communication people, and especially in our world today, listening is not something that, we necessarily are putting at the top of our priority list. And it's so important to building bridges and to helping, really create dialogue. He was really all about creating dialogue and, trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So whenever a company or a well-known statesman would come to us with a problem that they needed to solve, he would always, stop and try to put himself in someone else's place and try to understand, okay, what are the issues all surrounding us that are really influencing this discussion or this dialogue? How can I understand the opposition? How can I really, find a bridge, find an area where we have a consensus, where our values meet, and then we can begin to talk together. And I think, I learned that I think it's so important for communication people to really, have that understanding and to really make that part of how they look at a problem, how they, develop ideas and strategies. Because again, we see what happens when that falls apart. Then you have, a polarized situation where you can't really move forward. So I think that the trust he built was really based on this idea of it's not just what he thought, it was how he really was able to listen, to find a way to build a bridge, to open a dialogue that really brings people together. And I think the last point is really this feeling of relationships. For him, relationships with people were very important. He worked for three administrations of the U.S. government. We worked for the Vatican for 25 years. He worked for Kofi Annan over many years because he really, was there for them when they needed help. And it's really this personal commitment also, that it's not just a project that I'm taking on or I'm delegating it to a team. It's because I want to help you. And I also retain that too, because this wonderful gift that we have in communication agencies of being able to problem solve and to help people is really motivating. It really makes you feel like you've accomplished something at the end of the day, that you've really been able to give someone some support and been able to help them solve a problem.
Yeah. So Kathy, you mentioned your doctorate in political
Yes.
science and you have a master's and you're fluent in Chinese. What were your aspirations then when you went off to study that?
So I originally thought, given my father's background in, working with governments, that I would go into the government. I had studied, as you mentioned, Mandarin for many years. I also studied Russian and French and Italian. So languages were something that always intrigued me. And I really wanted to be able to play a role in a global environment. But then what happened was while I was working on my doctorate, I started helping the agency in programming, computer programming and statistics, another area that I had a lot of background in and I really loved. And then I saw that really we were working with a lot of global issues, and in the agency you really could see so many different parts of the world and interact with them. And I felt that was really a good opportunity to engage and to fulfill this part of what I love to do. And I think it's important for every young person to do something they feel passionate about. When you seek a job and when you're looking for where your career should take you, always pick something that you love, and then you'll excel at it. So it's not just taking a career advancement, it's really looking at, what excites you and what, gets you up in the morning, makes you creative and innovative.
Absolutely. Was it hard? I love your story that when you first went into the agency, you were working in a closet.
Yes.
You didn't have an office. So you're in the closet and you're studying analytics and numbers. And was it hard? Did you have to make an effort to, you're the daughter of the founder and here you are
Yes.
coming in and working for the company. How did everyone receive you?
Yeah, but they did. Well, the closet is a good indicator of how they received me.
Yeah, you didn't come in and sit, in the penthouse office.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So that's one reason also that I wanted to kind of break new ground, because I wanted to prove myself. So
Yes.
opening a China office was one way, and then I also started the healthcare group.
Right.
Again, agencies in those days were much more consumer oriented or government and policy oriented, but in the specific areas of business, like healthcare, it wasn't something where a lot, wasn't seen as like extremely wonderful opportunity. But I was married to a doctor. I got married. I married my husband when I was, still in college, and he was together. We wanted to do things that we really could share with each other, and being that he was studying medicine day and night, it was really, and all of our friends were in the medical community. It was great for me to be able to think about how we can communicate better health information, what kinds of, needs physicians had in terms of new innovations, patients were interacting, or the problems they had in talking to their doctors. So I really got a very deep insight into the healthcare field. And that's, now one of our largest practice areas. And I'm grateful for that, because during the pandemic, we were able to really work closely with a number of companies that were very active in terms of mRNA vaccines, in terms of diagnostics, in terms of therapeutics, in every one of those areas, and help understand how we could reach the underserved populations as well, who were mistrustful and didn't know what to expect with some of these new innovations that were coming forward. So, it turned out, I think I earned my stripes by being successful in these two areas.
Yes, absolutely. How smart was that? I mean, really, is it unusual to have a healthcare division in-house within a communications firm as opposed to a company that strictly works with the healthcare industry?
It's mixed. I think that most of the large agencies today have gone into having a strong healthcare practice. But it's really important. It's you need to have background in it as well. I mean, you can't, because of the complexities and the regulatory issues and, the science background, you need to be a little bit specialized. So it is a particular area of the communication industry, but nowadays a lot of the agencies have moved into this area.
I wonder, when I think about the work that you do and the news cycle and how things are immediate and need immediate attention and everything moves so quickly.
Mhm.
Has that become harder since COVID for you in the work that you do, or how has it
Actually,
changed?
Actually, it hasn't been harder. In some ways, it's been easier because we're all in front of our computers 24/7, and you
Mhm.
catch the news cycle. So, this morning we saw that some of the big tech companies are reporting, somewhat disappointing numbers. How do we react to that? What are the tech trends, and what does it mean in terms of the quarterly earnings we're facing? What implications will that have for the business, environment in terms of potential recession? We see all these numbers immediately as they come out, and we're able to kind of get a point of view about how to interpret them, where the people we're working with might have a useful thought or comment. So I think during the pandemic, the news flow, even though it was more rapid and had a greater, let's say, volume of news coming through, I think that we were able to actually stay on top of the news trends.
Yeah, good. Listen, we're going to go into our first break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about your work with CEOs and kind of what your strategy is around helping them to develop their impact socially and their thought leadership, something that's really new today in the world that wasn't something that was addressed certainly when your dad started. Stay with us for our watch team, and I'll be back with Kathy Bloomgarden, CEO of Reuter Finn. We'll be right back.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
The heat is on. In 2010, Philadelphia had a record of 55 days at or over 90 degrees. And those scorchers, they're on the rise. In fact, 10 of the 15 hottest summers occurred in the last 2 decades. Thank you for always trusting us to keep you informed.
You're streaming and we're streaming. Get the AccuWeather forecast and severe storm alerts 24/7 on our 6ABC streaming app.
Whether you're just getting started, already well on your way, planning for your future, drafting your vision, growing toward greatness, or finding that dreams really can come true. Whatever your next steps are, we'll be right here with you, just like we have been for 150 years. Start here, grow here, stay here. Penn Community Bank. Here we grow.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
The big story on Action News tonight.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. I'm Sue Rocco, and you're watching Women to Watch. And I'm joined today by Kathy Bloomgarden. Kathy's the CEO of Ruderfin, which is a global PR and creative agency. One of the things I think about, when we talk about leadership is that today there's such a focus and importance around leaders, particularly in the C-suite, developing what I think you describe as authentic and visionary leadership. And I wanted to share this quote. You said, "I think that most leaders would agree that one of the biggest challenges we face is following our own intuition." And so I wonder, when you're working with these clients, how do you go about helping them find that, but at the same time be focusing on the things that they need to be doing that other companies are doing as well?
So the first thing is that I think that this environment is probably one of the hardest environments today that CEOs actually face. There's so much pressure on them, not just to do well in their business and to lead their companies, but much more. And they're expected to do much more. So I think, there's been a bit of a pivot in terms of what the CEO role is. And the first thing that we saw coming out of the pandemic or during the pandemic was this real need for empathy. That wasn't always a great characteristic or something that people, held as a highest priority for a great CEO. Strong leadership, being really tough, being, performance driven. Look at the Jack Welch era. Of course, he was seen as one of the great CEOs of all time. But things have changed. And now, real empathy, being authentic, connecting with people, these are things that are really, really critical to leading an organization well today. So that's been a really important shift. So this intuitive feeling is, there is an emotional element of value, and emotional element that I think is part of that, paradigm of really being intuitive about how you lead your organization. I think the other, and I remember having a small group discussion with one of the largest companies in the world, the CEO of one of the largest companies. And I asked him, how much time do you spend on, internal versus external communications, understanding your customers, being, externally focused. And I knew this company was well known for being, the best at customer insights, really helping their organization spend their time externally and spending time understanding what customers' needs are and how they're changing. And he surprised me because he said, today, I spend more than half my time in internal and employee communication.
Wow.
And that's what's changed, So I think this feeling, and we all know the great resignation or the talent, challenges we face, that it's become more and more important that you really connect with your employees, that you create a culture that actually people can relate to. And every company is different. So, every leader is different. There's no formula for how to be a great CEO today, because it really does depend on the company you're leading, the kind of business you're in, your employee base. So I think that's one point. The second point is that people, CEOs have felt pressures on societal issues of every kind. And people are, why didn't you talk up? Should you talk up? When should you talk up? Obviously, to be authentic, you don't talk up on every single topic at issue, because that becomes then not seen. It's become a little bit disingenuous. So, how do you create, sort of an approach or a model which helps you in the pressures of the moment to decide when you talk up, or when you would take a position on a particular issue? That's another thing that CEOs have to think about and have to kind of resolve, working with their leadership team, thinking about what does their business do, what is it that connects to our business, and what does the CEO personally feel, intensely about. So it's a whole complex of variables that create today's pressures, and you do see a lot more churn in the C-suite than we've seen in past years. So I think that the CEO role has definitely shifted.
Do you think it's become easier for women? Because when we talk about the word empathy, I think naturally women are already connectors and relationship focused, right? And so the fact that we've now discovered, society has learned that it's important, to have good relationships with your employees and your clients, that would be embraced by women who are in leadership.
I think women are recognized for being slightly more emotional in integrating that into their leadership style. But of course, it's a little hard to make generalizations, because we do have some tough women who are leading large companies, and we have some very empathetic guys who are equally sympathetic and authentic in their voice. So yes, I think people do recognize that women have a tendency to be a little bit more empathetic, but I do think that it's a learning for both genders, that this is something that they need to embrace.
Yeah. Tell me what has been one of your most cherished life lessons?
So actually, I have the great opportunity to work with a lot of amazing leaders in different companies and different industries, and I learned something from everyone. And one of the great mentors that I had and have worked now for over 10 years is John Chambers, who was head of Cisco, chairman and CEO of Cisco. And he turned to me one day and he said, "What is the worst thing you can do, Kathy?" And I thought, oh my God, what's the worst thing I can do in my business? I guess not fix my mistakes, right? And he said, "Wrong." He said, "Doing the right thing for too long." And I was like, wow, I would never have thought of that in a million years. If it's right, I usually feel I'm going to leave it, right? And that was like, I always remember that. It's a lesson that's very deeply embedded in now in everything I think about, because, I think you have to constantly innovate. If you don't innovate, if you get too comfortable, then, as John always said, a company that doesn't change and innovate dies ultimately. So we started this something called a tech lab at Ritter Finn in order to be able to be on top of this. And our tech lab, which is headed by a wonderful technology professional, is constantly looking at the innovation ecosystem around us. Like, what new tools are coming? How can we use analytics differently? What great entrepreneurs in the innovation space should we be talking to? And then bringing in pilots and testing them. And I really try to help, train our people to think about the new tools, to use them, to try them, to experiment with them. And I think that's one of my most important lessons was really that wherever you are today is not going to be good enough for tomorrow. So you have to constantly push yourself to think, in an innovative way, and think about what you can change, alter, and do better in anticipating, kind of the what's next.
So here's what I think is sometimes hard to balance. The company's mantra is what's next, right?
Yes.
And obviously you have done that in your career, expanding into China and with the healthcare division. How do you maintain that focus on what's next, while at the same time there's this conversation globally that we all need to live in the moment, right? And be present and really, just be mindful of the moments that we're in. Yeah.
So another great learning from another great leader was imagination without execution is a fantasy. So I think that you need both imagination and execution. So we have to drive our performance because, we want people to feel part of a dynamic and great enterprise that's growing, that's taking on new assignments, that's breaking new grounds, that's a pioneer in our field. But at the same time, we can't, just stay where we are. So we have to kind of look ahead of and see where we could be evolving or changing. So you need to do both, because otherwise, as that great saying, or as my client said, you can have all the imagination in the world. It's like letting butterflies out of a net and you can't catch them. So you need to really be sure that you're delivering and your performance is strong and that you're focusing on the here and now, as you said, Sue.
Yeah. You've had, and you do have some incredible clients and individuals. Is there someone that, if you could wave a magic wand, you could work with, someone that you've always wanted to bring on perhaps as a new client?
Oh, there's so many, really. I mean, I'm inspired by the great innovations that are happening in healthcare, this possibility with gene and cell therapies where we do have a lot of work, but that are going to really, be cures. All of us have people who we love in our families who've gotten sick and, perhaps there wasn't the right therapy. And just to think that, really we're on the cusp of this really new era where, you'll be able to cure certain kinds of cancers, to really make a difference in terms of, inherited rare diseases. These are things which are just, it's a gift to be able to develop information and to share it, when in such meaningful areas. Similarly, in technology, we know today every company is a technology company. We're all adopting new technologies to be more efficient, to give people more details of the things they're interested in, to have new purchasing and buying options, to be maybe a metaverse participant, who knows? So all these great things, it's wonderful, again, to be part of this changing world that we're living in. And, we do feel, and people always say that out of great chaos comes, complete renaissance and great transformation. So all of the problems we're having in terms of climate change and in terms of inflationary pressures, in terms of pandemics. I mean, you couldn't make this novel up if you were to sit, from every corner, we've got a problem coming our way. And we really, what looks like unsolvable, unsurmountable issues. And I really believe that we will innovate in a way that we have never innovated in the past, a few decades, that we're at this moment where we really have the opportunity to change. And I'm really grateful that Rutherford would play a part in communicating what some of these discoveries are.
Do you ever feel anxious with the pace of life? And if you do, what kind of grounds you?
Yeah, I do, of course. I mean, I really feel that Friday comes along and I'm like, thank God it's Friday. It's like, why am I saying this to myself? I shouldn't be saying this to myself. But actually, I'm a big exercise nut and I swim a lot. I try to swim a mile a day. And I do feel when I'm swimming, I feel this calm that I can like mull over a problem, that I can kind of reset. And it really helps me to gain a certain calm, that you only can get from doing something like a swimming, get into the pace of swimming for, 50 minutes or so.
Yeah. Tell me what is hard for you. In other words, the viewers and listeners see Kathy Bloomgarden, CEO, global company. Is there a challenge that you've had in your life that you've overcome that you're proud of, or something that you still have to work on?
I wish I were better in understanding the technology, technologies of our time. I tried to take an online course in AI, and I tried to take an online course in quantum physics, and I was completely lost.
Quantum physics. I think I'll just study quantum physics. Probably one of the hardest subject matters.
It was really not useful use of my time, because I didn't grasp really what I was hoping for. So I'm frustrated by that. But I've learned that you can work with technologies without really deeply understanding them.
Well, that's interesting because we talk about STEM on the show a lot and of course, wanting to encourage girls and women to enter the field because we want their contributions. Um, do you have, a philosophy around how we can do that? How can we encourage more women and young girls and perhaps you mentor? I'm not sure if you have the opportunity to do that. What are the things that you think are working in getting them to pursue these historically male dominated fields?
Well, I think the excitement about the potential impact that they can have is really the most important thing. When you look at, again, everyday smart homes, self-driving cars, going to the moon with, Elon Musk, these are things that are underpinned by science or being able to cure cancer. So the more, people feel that they can spend their lives making such a huge difference, I think that they really will, embrace much more the opportunity to be excited about STEM and to go into the STEM field. So I think it's more about talking about the impact rather than simply just talking about the career journey that you can have. And I think that women do have to push a little harder, and in order to get the best positions and to get into the right programs. But again, there's that saying of my dad's, which is just because you haven't done it doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah. Is there how many employees do you have? You must be overseeing a massive amount of people.
So we have roughly 1,000 to 1,200 people, employees, all around the world, though. And again, we try to stay in contact, and we have a regular, every 2 weeks we have a town hall. Everybody just gets on. Started this during the pandemic. Zoom enables it really easily, so everybody can join given time zones. Our Asia colleagues, we have to jiggle that a little bit when we want to have a global town hall. Otherwise, it's just the EU and the US. But I think that it's important to us to make our colleagues feel that we're one community. And when our colleagues in China actually had experienced a lockdown, we all wrote notes and connected with them and made them feel that we understand, how difficult it is and that we're part of sharing the challenge that they have. So, I think that this really proactive sense of trying and really genuinely feeling that we're one community, we care for each other is very important.
Is that if I were to ask you how you would describe your own leadership style, what would you say it is?
Well, I think I try my very best to help people to listen and to help people realize their own potential. And that's really an important part of my job. And to jump in, we are very, very non-hierarchical. So I've had a reverse mentor for a long time. I want to be digitally native. I want to, know better how to use all the different social platforms. And, I learned so much from our young people and how to be more adept at that. So I think that this idea, just like my dad walking down the hall, walking into someone's young person's office, talking to them at their desk, that's important. That's really important to have this kind of, even non-hierarchical community.
Yeah. And have them have that opportunity where they might be intimidated by you because of your title and who you are. But for them to see that perhaps they can reach that level one day.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're out of time, and I'm so grateful that you took time to be on the show and share a little bit about your life story. And I wish you such continued success.
Well, Sue, thank you. Thank you for asking me, and thank you for everything you do in terms of sharing stories, because it's so important and it's so inspiring.
It is. It is. Thank you so much for saying that. Stay with us, and up next will be Sherry Morrison for our Lifestyle Watch, and she'll be joined by master storyteller Charlotte Blake Alston. We'll be right back.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
The heat is on. In 2010, Philadelphia had a record of 55 days at or over 90 degrees. And those scorchers, they're on the rise. In fact, 10 of the 15 hottest summers occurred in the last 2 decades. Thank you for always trusting us to keep you informed.
You're streaming and we're streaming. Get the AccuWeather forecast and severe storm alerts 24/7 on our 6ABC streaming app.
Whether you're just getting started, Already well on your way? Planning for your future? Drafting your vision? Growing toward greatness? Or finding that dreams really can come true? Whatever your next steps are, we'll be right here with you, just like we have been for 150 years. Start here, grow here, stay here. Penn Community Bank. Here we grow.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
The big story on Action News tonight.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Welcome to the lifestyle segment of Women to Watch. I'm Sherry Morrison. Today I have a very special guest, a master storyteller, narrator, and librettist. So everybody grab your milk and cookies and welcome to the show, Charlotte Blake Alston.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
My pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. I've been reading about you, listening to some of your work, and it's so much fun. I'm learning so much. Charlotte has a gift in her voice. It's powerful, rich, encompassing. It has a cadence that draws you in. I've listened to quite a few of her performances. They are transcendental. I close my eyes. I float off into my imagination like a cartoon character, lifted from the ground, following the wafting smell of something luscious. But before we get into the story of your storytelling, please tell us a little bit about where you're from and your education.
Well, I often like to say that I am Philly born, Philly bred, and when I die, I'll be Philly dead.
That's great.
I grew up in South Philadelphia, raised my kid in West Philadelphia, and I'm just a few stones throw away here in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania. But yes, I grew up in Philadelphia, went to public schools in Philadelphia, and then attended an HBCU, Cheney University, in the good old 1960s.
Wow. That's great. Well, you do have this magical power of drawing people in when you tell a story. How and when did this start?
I think it was, kind of a gradual, incremental process. I think it's a combination of things. One was the seeds for what I'm doing now were really planted by my father, who was outnumbered in our house by musicians. And he could not carry a tune from the living room to the dining room, but he had a passion for language and literature, and kind of began to nurture me when I was very young in oral speaking. And so he wrote some monologues for me to do. He would coach me and how to convey those, the cadence of it, all of those things. But I think also the experiences that I had early on in my teaching career, working with our youngest students from pre-K to second grade. I've taught pre-K through graduate school. With our youngest ones who are developing language skills, that I would begin to incorporate storytelling in my classroom in a range of ways. So I think it was a combination. This was all before I had any thoughts in my head about stepping onto this as my life's work or my life's path. And then certainly when I did, I had the opportunity to be among other people who were applying their trade as storytellers and to learn from them as well. And over time, I think, as a friend of mine put it, I came into my voice. I came into myself over time.
Well, that's a great way to put it. I mean, your father did a magnificent job at planting that seed. You went on to earn a degree in teaching and taught in Philadelphia for 20 years. You were with Friends Select for 10 of those 20 years. And you also taught part-time at Penn.
Yes.
What happened in that time? What made you realize you wanted to make a change?
Early, when I left high school, what I wanted to do really was to go to New York and sit at the feet of Alvin Ailey. And I was a 3-sport athlete. I was a dancer. And dance to me was another form of athletic expression, but done artfully, so that you could defy gravity for a moment in time and make it look effortless. That was like a high for me. So that's what I wanted to do. And my dad kind of said, no young girl in her right mind would go to New York, first of all, the city of sin, and pursue something, as he put it, as frivolous as dance. You know, you go to college, you get a degree, and you get a real job. So I watched people like my idol, Judith Jamison, not be in her right mind, travel all over the world. But I think that internal desire to fulfill myself artistically never left. And finally, I think it was, I'm giving away a little bit of my age here, but I was 41 at the time. My brother had also set an example, a model for me without knowing it. He taught strings in public school for 1 year and said, this is not for me. I'm going to survive on my art. And began to develop his skills on both piano and violin, but eventually became one of the greatest, best known jazz violinists in the world. So he had kind of set that model for me initially. But there was just this increasingly intense internal restlessness to explore another aspect of who I was. And the realization hit me at 41 that I had probably lived over half my life already. And what did I want to do with the rest of it? Longevity is not guaranteed. Health is not guaranteed. At the time, we had a mother who had been active in her church, active in the community, and began to make her descent into dementia. So that's something we would never have expected, particularly for her. But it just reminded me that tomorrow is not guaranteed to any of us. So I'm here right now. I have this set of abilities and affinities and yearnings and desires and gifts. I thought even if you believe in reincarnation, you could come back as a moose. So I'm here now. And what do I want to do with the remaining time that I have? That was my thinking at that time. And I just stepped out. I did not take a sabbatical. I didn't say I'm going to take a half a year off. I just left. And I thought the worst that can possibly happen is it won't work. And, I'm not an idiot. I'll decide what I want to do or, fall back on my degree. But I didn't want to wait until I was 65 or 70 and look back and wonder if I could make it work. Also, a new word began to enter the American lexicon at that time. And that word was downsizing. So all of these folks who had spent thousands of dollars in tuition at the Wharton School were having their positions eliminated in corporate America. So that just reiterated once again for me that nothing is guaranteed, even a salaried job. I remember my great aunt said, "You're gonna leave that good job with all those benefits." But I heard that song. She lived through the Depression, I prayed literally there'd be a net if I fell, and the net turned into a catapult. And it was almost as sort of hokey as it might sound. It was almost as though I was walking in one direction, and then as soon as I turned, all of a sudden, click, 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 all these doors began to open for me. And I remember when my car broke down, I drove pieces of junk for many years. And I was the U-turn queen of West Philadelphia. And I did a U-turn once and my car stopped in the middle of the street. It shut off. Some guys had to come and push it to the side. But I remember calling my brother and I said, take me to a car dealership and leave me there. And I came with this new car and I called a friend and I said, I just got this new car. I've left my job. I'm just stepping out on this. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. And she said, claim it. Claim it. You need a dependable car to do what you are about to do. I said, okay. I never missed a car payment. So every time I needed a door to open for me financially, it did. And I didn't seek it out. It often came to me. So I think we often look at risk as a negative in our culture, but I think we need to lay that to rest. That the world is open to you. And I often tell young people, you know, you are the only you who has ever existed on the planet before. So this is the time that you have. You've been given this gift of life and being here, and you've come in with gifts. So this is the time for you to nurture those and see what it is you can offer to the world as well. So that was the motivation behind it. But I have to tell you, I still get pangs if I go to see a dance company.
Well, you can go see them all the time now, and you're in the right venues to be able to do that. So, what do you think it is about storytelling that's so special? What do you think it brings to our world and the community and our culture?
Well, I think first of all, it's arguably the oldest art form in existence as human beings began to develop language and ways of communicating orally. They began to tell stories. The hunters would go off on the hunt, come back with the meat for the entire village or community, and then they would retell the story of the hunt. Everyone would gather around to hear that story. It would be told in spoken word. They might dance a part of that story as well. So it's probably the oldest art form in existence as people looked around in the early days of the world and saw the sun and the moon, rivers, oceans, people, animals. They were awed by these things and created stories to offer some kind of a thought or stimulate conversation about how these things came into existence and their place in that environment, that there was something much bigger and greater than themselves. Stories were often used to continue to teach children and adults as well and reinforce those shared values in a community, to remind people of their behaviors and their interactions with one another. As people migrated from one part of the world to another, they took their stories with them. People would hear those stories. They might change them just a little bit to fit their particular cultural context, but the essence of the story still remains the same. And essentially, for me, those stories, and particularly the traditional ones that have been passed down, embody the collective wisdom of mankind. They speak to human interaction, human foibles, human strengths, human suffering, human dilemmas, decisions that we have to make, good versus evil, sometimes multi-layered complex issues that are not easy to solve. There's a whole collection of stories in West Africa that are known as dilemma tales, where the storyteller doesn't give the resolution. It's left to the listeners to discuss and talk about. Characters, you'll find trickster characters in just about every story culture in the world. And if anybody listening to this right now, if you go back far enough in your own ethnic history and ethnic background, you will find an oral tradition. So before there was the written word, there was the spoken word. So I once gave a presentation talking about the importance of keeping folk tales alive, traditional stories alive. And there's a trickster character in Aztec culture, it's either Aztec or Inca, called Huehuecoyote. We consider that to be an ancient culture. Hue means old. So here in an ancient culture, they had a character called Old Coyote. So tricksters have always been among us. They're still among us. The stories remind us that we need to be mindful of the tricksters who are around us and not have our vision clouded, the vision of truth clouded. So those stories, as I said, I think embody the collective wisdom of mankind. There's a storyteller, Elizabeth Ellis, who always says they're not good because they're old because they're good. And certainly storytellers tell contemporary versions of many of those traditional tales as well. But I think it reminds us of and helps make a connection as human beings, the commonalities that we share as human beings on the planet.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You've performed on national and regional stages, including the Smithsonian Institute, the National Museum of Women in the Arts, John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, along with locations all over the world. Quite impressive. You've been working with the Philadelphia Orchestra for 31 years. In 2004, you received a phone call from the orchestra. They had a conductor, Thomas Wilkins, that had requested you narrate excerpts of Martin Luther King's The Dream speech while they were playing Barber's Adagio. Can you tell us a little bit about that story? And we don't have a lot of time, so.
The first thing I thought, and I think I voiced it, was, you want me to talk over the Barber Adagio for strings? I can't listen to that work without becoming emotional. But what Thomas had done was taken excerpts of the Dream speech and married them with Barber's Adagio, so that the crescendos and the increase in the tension, the emotional tension of the work, matches the increase in the emotional intensity of the Dream speech. So it worked, and it has worked in subsequent years since. I've done it many times here with the orchestra and with other orchestras as well.
Yeah, at least 20 years now you've been doing it with Philadelphia.
Yes.
Yeah, you do a remarkable job. You're a member of the National Black Storytellers Association, and you've been featured storyteller at both presidential and gubernatorial inaugural festivities. What were some of the most exciting and memorable moments you've had as a storyteller?
There's so many there, and they're really varied. The opportunity just a few weeks ago was the National Black Storytelling Festival is coming up in a couple of weeks. It will be in Baltimore this year. We rotate around the country, and it brings in storytellers from all over the diaspora, from here in the States, from the islands, from the African continent. A few weeks ago was the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee. The storytelling community is quite an incredibly rich and diverse community, and we feel like a family. We had Sheila McIntyre, who's Yupik from Alaska. We had our first female cowgirl, a poet and musician who's 21 years old, played with her brother who is 17 years old. I had a set, thankfully, with one of my storyteller friends, Motoko, who is Japanese. So we get this wonderful diversity of storytellers. It's a wonderful, diverse group of human beings who come together and share. So there have been many highlights. I think, on some level, the most memorable are the opportunities I have to go into spaces where particularly young people, I've done it with adults as well, but young people are incarcerated. It's a community that is a very needy community. And they really have an appreciation when artists come in. I ended one program, we did a Q&A. It was a pregnant pause. I was ready to say goodbye. And a girl way in the back raised her hand. She looked to be no more than 15 years old and incarcerated. And her question was, what does it feel like to touch people's hearts? And I had my first experience of feeling my knees start to buckle when she said that. So it just told me that there was a connection made to this girl who was in this environment of being incarcerated, but it still made a connection. So, there's the big stages, there's all of that, but then there are those kinds of experiences as well that will make keep me impressed, will make a lifelong impression on me.
Well, as your email tagline says, words have power, use them thoughtfully.
Yes.
Between that, which is part I got out of your starfish story, and your TED Talk about the hunter Agalusa, which sums up storytelling, nothing is truly dead unless it is forgotten and not spoken of again. So everybody keep telling your stories. They keep our heritage, our culture, and our memories rich and alive. Charlotte, I'm sorry we're out of time. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us today and sharing your story.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Sure. For more information about Charlotte, her performances, past, present, and future, go to www.charlotteblakealston.com. Sue will be right back after the break to close out the show. Ladies, keep living your dreams.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
The heat is on. In 2010, Philadelphia had a record of 55 days at or over 90 degrees. And those scorchers, they're on the rise. In fact, 10 of the 15 hottest summers occurred in the last 2 decades. Thank you for always trusting us to keep you informed.
You're streaming and we're streaming. Get the AccuWeather forecast and severe storm alerts 24/7 on our 6ABC streaming app.
Whether you're just getting started, already well on your way, planning for your future, drafting your vision, growing toward greatness, or finding that dreams really can come true. Whatever your next steps are, we'll be right here with you, just like we have been for 150 years. Start here, grow here, stay here. Penn Community Bank. Here we grow.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view. It goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
The big story on Action News tonight.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hi, welcome back. Thank you so much for being with me for another week of Women to Watch. I hope you enjoyed that segment with Charlotte as much as I did. Next week, I will be joined by Tracy Gee. Tracy is the CPO of the National Association of Corporate Directors in Washington, D.C. Big thank you to Tone and Sherry and all of our sponsors. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Go Phillies!
We could do a summer party. It's the weather.
Can't we do the show outside or on the roof?
Weekdays at 9 on 6ABC.